Hey, Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. I love chatting all things sales. So before we get started and dive in and nerd out together, could you just say hi to everybody listening and let them know who you are?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everybody, for listening. I appreciate you being here today. So I'm Nikki Rausch. My company is Sales Maven. I'm a sales coach and trainer. I show up with over 25 years of sales experience, primarily selling in the tech industry. I've had Sales Maven and teaching women primarily how to sell for the last 10 and a half years. And I really specialize in the conversation of selling. So I teach a 5-step process to a sales conversation. It's called the selling staircase. I wrote my 3rd book around it. And the whole idea is that sales isn't something that you do to another person. Sales is something you do with another person. So I teach people how to have more strategic conversations that feel authentic and genuine to them and feel really good to your potential buyer.
I love that. Sales conversations. What do you think makes, in a nutshell, because you have a whole book on this, but
Yeah.
what do you think makes a good sales conversation? Like what makes it a conversation?
Questions. That's the simplest answer. A lot of times people think when you go into a sales conversation, like you have to like dance, like you're the monkey and you're supposed to dance and you're supposed to convince this person how great you are. But actually I teach that if you ask better questions, your questions can set you up to establish your expertise and help influence in the mind of the prospect. Oh, I'm talking to somebody who is asking me questions that I've never thought of myself. And therefore they obviously probably know the answers or how to get to the answers because of the way they're framing these questions. So I want to work with them. And now it allows for the prospect to actually be talking in a lot of ways, talking themselves into what it is that they need and want. And then when you have permission to put an offer in front of them, it's a much easier sell.
I totally agree. And I think that people, even if they kind of know they're being sold to, will engage in the conversation if they feel seen and heard and understood. And that's a big part of it too, right?
Yeah, I think through questions, you'll find that oftentimes people will be more revealing about how to earn their business. They'll be more engaged in the conversation because it's actually them getting to think through things and then say them out loud. So that's more interesting to them than what you could say, frankly, a lot of times. And then the other thing is they'll also be more interested to hear what you do have to say because it won't just feel like you're talking at them the whole time. You're talking with them. And real conversations are something that I think as humans, we love.
Yeah. Now I have a slight sales background too, and I have this kind of ear for this thing when I'm getting sold, where I always think to myself, oh, I just gave you an in to like really go deeper on this type of question, or I just revealed a major pain point and you just kept going to your script. Like you just kept going down the list of your 10 questions because you got to fill this in for your CRO or whatever. Yeah. And it's really funny because I'm just like, you really could have dug deep into that problem point or a pain point and you chose not to. You're going with the script. Can you talk about sales scripts versus sales conversations and why it's pivotal to use one versus the other?
Yeah. And I think you even said this, like it's about listening, right? So you need to be a really good listener to be good at sales. And people are giving you clues all the time. They're giving you insights. And through conversation, you should be able to pick those insights up and then go with them, lean in that way. So I'm not opposed to somebody having a script. I am opposed to reading it like you're a robot. Because if all you're trying to do is check boxes and write in answers to questions, like we don't actually need you. Like AI can do that now. Like what's the point of you? So
this is true.
At this point, it is about real conversation. It is about that nuance. It's about if somebody's going to share something and be revealing, how do you ask a question that allows them to go deeper? Or maybe they've just given you enough of an answer that you can now move them to the next step in the process. You don't need to keep going through your questions. You have everything you need based on this one thing they just said that gives you insight. Oh, I actually am talking to somebody who's a potential buyer for the thing that I offer. They just qualified themselves in the information that they gave. So instead of like, wait, there's more. I'm not an infomercial here. Like, I got to keep going. I got to keep selling. I got to keep doing. It's like, no, we move to the next process or the next step. And sometimes the next step is you saying, I have an offer that I think is going to best meet your needs. Would you be open to hearing it? And they're like, yeah. And that conversation can take 5 minutes or it can take 30 minutes, but you should be able to be nimble enough in the conversation to go where that prospect kind of opened the door for you. So you got to pay attention and you have to listen.
Totally. And another thing too, I would love your take on this. And then I want to zoom out for a second into like the whole sales process, because we're talking about the sales conversation, like assuming we've already gotten here, right? Let's zoom back into like how we get to this place. But also, one thing that's happened to me recently is I've had a lot of people, get on calls with me, and I recognize I'm not the solution, or I don't have the solution for them. If I'm truly, we'll say, diagnosing what they need, I realize that I'm actually not the best person to serve them. And I think that personally, I think you have to have the ability to do that as well without having to force a scenario where you become the solution for them, but you acknowledge that, hey, maybe I'm not the solution for you, but I can actually help you get the right solution and then make a good impression as well. What's your take on approaching that?
Yeah, I think with everything, and hopefully in life, but definitely in sales, is it should always be approached with a high level of integrity. So if you know that this particular buyer would be better served with some other solution, it is in your best interest to be really upfront about that. And if you have a resource for them, offer it. And if you don't have a resource, just be honest about it. Because what happens a lot of times is maybe you're not the right solution now, but you could be the right solution in the future. And they'll come back to you because they'll remember, oh, this person actually led me in this direction that I needed to go. And now I feel ready to go back and, explore, and or they'll refer people to you. Because that's the other thing is they're like, maybe I wasn't a good fit for Nikki's program, but I really liked her and she was really honest and upfront with me. And I think you might be a good fit. You should get on a call with Nikki, right? So that's what we want, is setting, like I always think, yes to sales, but you also should be creating ambassadors in the marketplace for you, because ambassadors in the marketplace for you will always have more influence than anything you can say about yourself. Like, they'll just carry more weight because they've got some rapport with this person. This person's got some know, like, and trust with them. So if, I don't know about you, Shannon, but if somebody you really love and trust recommends somebody, you usually kind of already go in with this mindset of like, this is a good person because my friend who I trust and love recommended them.
I agree. But it's also the social proof of now somebody who's like me achieves success with them. It reduces the risk that I won't do the same.
Yeah.
Like we're always concerned with the risk of failure or the risk that this won't work out. And it reduces that risk and therefore makes us more comfortable with that. There is a trust factor on the positive side, but I look at it as it's also risk reduction that, well, I'm gambling less because my friend likes them. So that increases the chances I'll also be successful. And also from the standpoint of advocates and ambassadors, the other thing too is people who are ambassadors for you. I actually had that happen where somebody was looking for a bookkeeper. We don't offer that service. It's just fractional CFO, but we put them in touch with their dream bookkeeper. I have a group of people that I work with and I say, you got to work with one of these people. They matched with them and they're like, this person has changed my life. I have Shannon to thank for this. It's like the person who sets you up with your future spouse. Like you remember that, like, look what you did. You started this relationship and they're always going to have a positive association with you that they can then tell people. And honestly, just saying your name, even if it's not directly recommending you and saying, well, I found her through Shannon, I'm like, that still goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes, it carries so much weight. I had this conversation on my own podcast recently with somebody, and we were talking about reviews and testimonials and stuff like that on this episode. And she was like pointing out how, we make buying decisions now. And I was thinking like, I really don't make very, very many buying decisions without reading reviews. Like even stuff that I'm going to order on Amazon, I always look, what's the score? What are people saying about this? And the thing is I think we now kind of have this mentality in our society. We want to know what other people think. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm only influenced by what other people think. Like I make my own decisions, but it's nice to hear what other people have to say. So yeah, we have to be creating ambassadors out in the marketplace. We need people to be leaving testimonials. I actually have even received testimonials from people who haven't hired me before, where they're like, I had this conversation with Nikki, and in 10 minutes with her, I learned something so impactful that I recommend her to anybody I know that wants help with sales. And that person didn't even actually hire me.
Yes. And I've done that. I've done that for someone else. I have somebody who works in marketing. I didn't actually pay her, but after the sales call, she gave me a 3-step set of recommendations of what I should do next and said, this is what I think you should focus on until we work together. And I was like, done, you're hired. Like what, like now I was just going, you're literally doing this. Like, I can tell you're really listening. I can tell you really care. And she also followed up 3 weeks later and says, hey, how are those things going for you right now? And I was like, oh, you're brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I also haven't done those things. So I'm like, I'm going, oh, you're good at accountability, which is a value, right? So I'm going, oh, this is actually a really good, it's just kind of like furthering the reputation of those people and saying, wow, they really do stand out and differentiate. And I think that's a big factor.
Yeah. I do too. I totally agree. I talk about this a lot because I always say the things I teach are based on, my foundation is based on rapport. So I often say it's relationship first, rapport always. And when I come into contact with somebody, I always think I have a rapport bank account with every single person I come into contact with. And my goal is always to make a deposit in that rapport bank account for a few reasons. One is because it builds that know, like, and trust. And two, because I am such a flawed human that I make mistakes. And when I make mistakes, that's a withdrawal from that rapport bank account. And I need to have a balance built up in that bank account with every single person I come into contact with, because that time where I don't follow up or I don't, say the right thing or whatever, and there's this little withdrawal, we give people a lot of grace when there's balance. But if you start from a place of like, there's no balance and now you're in the red, like people aren't going to give you that chance to earn their business in the future.
Yeah. If you're in a deficit with that, that rapport bank account, then you really can't afford to make mistakes, or it's going to become more fragile. When you make one minor mistake, it can send you into the red, versus if you're constantly depositing, you can actually build that up where a small mistake is just a brush off the shoulder and say, hey, we all make mistakes. We move on. Still love you. Let's keep going. And that's huge. And I realized that I love how you articulated that for you listening, because I think that if you directly apply that concept, I didn't realize that's actually what I've been doing too, is thinking like, how do we just make constant deposits in clients and in colleagues, and just make constant deposits in that rapport bank account? Because not in the interest of, I would like to withdraw, not in the interest of, a quid pro quo, or like, I can't wait to ask them for something.
Right.
It's deposits for the sake of deposits.
Yes. Yeah. Because if you think about, when you hear about people that have achieved a really high level of success and they're like, how did you ever get here? Like, what happened? A lot of times they'll give examples of people who opened doors for them. People who, like, we don't get anywhere alone, really. Like, we don't achieve our highest level. I know some of the biggest advances in my own business in the last 10 and a half years have come from relationships where people have opened doors for me, not because I asked them to, not because I was intentionally building relationships in hopes that they were going to do something, super for my business. It was more about like, I care about people and I show up. I'm credible. I only talk about things that I feel like I have some expertise around, and I stand in a place of integrity. That allows for people to feel good about opening doors for me. And also I open doors for other people as often as I can, not with this idea of wanting to get something out of them or get something back, because that's who I am. That's like who I, aspire to be in the world, is generous. And I have been on the receiving end of so much generosity.
Amazing. And so have I, but it never really occurs to me that, like, I don't think about the deposits I've made. I just think that's kind of the operating model. Like, that should just become the habit of, you should just become that person that does those things. And then people will appreciate you for it, but then also be willing to do the same back to you. And I think that's this kind of like rule of reciprocity, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that definitely happens. And I know you mentioned, Nikki, that you have this like 5-step process. right? So let's get a little bit more like tactical on the, like, what is this process? Let's go through, how do people get their butt in a room with you to have these conversations? And how can you help facilitate that through a more structured process?
Okay, so my 5-step framework for a sales conversation, I call it the selling staircase. I teach it as a staircase because most people understand that when you're ascending a staircase, you're going one step at a time. You're not going from the bottom step and hopping up to the top step, which is one of the mistakes people make in sales. They meet somebody and they go right in for the sale, right? You show up in somebody's inbox and you're immediately word vomiting over them about why they should hire you. And they're like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, that's how you bust your butt. That's how you fall.
Yeah, or you bang your shins, right? It's
right.
Like, this is dangerous. So this 5-step process, it starts with introduction. And the objective here is to make a powerful, positive first impression, because first impressions, they absolutely matter. People are making judgments about you. This first impression can happen on your website. It can happen on how you're showing up on social media. It can happen because somebody hears you on a podcast and they're already forming an impression. Your listeners right now have already started to make some pretty significant decisions about who I am as a person, right? So my job is to do everything I can to establish a powerful first impression that gets somebody going like, okay, maybe I'll keep listening. She said something, I'm intrigued a little bit. And then the second step in the process is to create curiosity. This is the most missed step. Most people, when I ask them, do you know how to create curiosity when you're talking about your products or your business? They look at me with a blank stare and go, what now? Like, what do you mean create curiosity? But if you don't know how to create curiosity about who you are, the business that you have, the services that you provide, a lot of times, people don't know what you know. They don't know your years of experience. They don't know the impact that you can make in somebody's life or business when they hire you. So your job is to pique that curiosity, to get them going like, what? Tell me more about that, or ask questions. And this is where you get into conversation.
Can I zoom in on that really quick on the curiosity piece? Yep. There's a difference between creating curiosity and withholding information.
Amen. Yes.
I'll let you just react to that. There's a difference between, because people say in the name of creating curiosity, they play this little like dangling the carrot, or they play hard to get in a way, like hard to get information out of. And I'm like, that's not creating curiosity. If you could just like dig into that for a second.
Yeah, that's annoying people. And actually I'll use it in the way that I teach curiosity. So hang with me here for just a second, because this might sound a little crazy, like I'm going off the rails, but I promise I'll bring it back around. So I teach creating curiosity it's the difference between how you call a dog and how you call a cat. And what I mean by that is when you think about if you want to get a dog's attention, a lot of times we change our demeanor, we change how we show up in a room. We do these things where we like go, come here, boy, come here, right? And dogs really love that kind of energy. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what's happening, but I want to play, right? They're so in. Unfortunately, a lot of people show up in rooms, in people's inboxes, in wherever, and they have this dog calling energy. And we as humans don't respond in that same way. We kind of push away. We go like, oh, too much, coming on too hard, selling too hard. So we don't want to show up with dog calling energy. We want to show up with what I call cat calling energy. Now, cat calling energy is this idea of like, here, kitty, kitty. And if you know cats, a lot of times cats won't even come to that. They'll look at you like, what? And now you've just got their attention enough for there to be like one step more in the conversation for them to decide whether or not they want to take that step. So I teach, we have to create what I call here kitty kitty statements. And I'm going to address those if you want. But the thing that you said to me about withholding information, that's the difference between cat calling here kitty kitty and playing cat. Playing cat is pulling back and being like, I'm a big deal. And if you want me, you have to come to me. Well, if you haven't created any curiosity in somebody, and that's how you show up in the room, they go, no, thanks. I'll move on. I can find anybody else to do, provide the service or the product that you have. Like, you're not the only game in town. There's plenty of other games. So if you're showing up with this idea of like, I'm the cat in this scenario, no, you're not. You are calling the cat in this scenario. And so it is a big difference. So withholding information, just like, and I don't know if this is controversial for you, but I will say this is one of my soapbox things. This idea of people who don't put pricing on their website because I'm a cat. And if people want to talk to me and they want to hear my pricing, they'll get on a call with me. No, they won't. They'll just go to the next website that Google has provided them of somebody who does what you do. So playing cat is not the approach here. There are times to play cat, I will say that, in sales, but this is not one of them.
I agree. And even, and to get really specific about that, the guidance I typically give is, especially if your pricing is variable, or you're like, I can't confidently say what the price is going to be, and I don't want to set improper expectations. I could say, put starting at, or put something that indicates the range of the investment, so no one's wasting their time.
Yeah. And I would encourage range. So I get the idea of people wanting to put starting at. Here's one potential pitfall that you can find. If you just put starting at, you now have anchored that lower price. So when you give them a higher price, because that was the starting at price, they remember the lower price. And now they feel like, well, now I'm being gouged. But if you put a range, and I understand this, that depending on the thing that you offer, putting a concrete price may not be even an option in your business. But if you put a range, and I don't care what the range is, I don't care if you say it can be anywhere from $100 to $100,000. But now when they get on a call with you, or they explore kind of working with you, and you quote them a price of $50,000, they're thinking like, oh, I'm glad I'm not the $100,000 range. But if you say from $1 to $100,000 and you quote them $50,000, they're going to be like, what? That's crazy. So put a range. That would be my suggestion.
I love that idea. So we've dug deep on the creating curiosity, and I want to make sure we cover the other three. And then I do want to apply this sort of as we're talking about the context of actually selling to customers and like the conversation. So I want you to get through the other three, and let's hear those. And then we'll dig into some of the application of those, including the cat calling, because I think that's really cool.
Okay, good. So now when you create curiosity, what a lot of times happens is then you get buying signals. Now, buying signals are verbal and nonverbal cues that people give that indicate interest. And when you get one, you're going to invite them to the next step. The next step in the selling process oftentimes is what I call discovery. Now, other people have different names for it. I actually don't care what you call it. If you call it a sales call, if you call it a consult call, if whatever, I don't care. But the idea of the discovery is to ask really smart questions that lead people down the path of wanting to hire you. And I kind of addressed this earlier in the conversation about your questions should set you up to establish your expertise. So you don't need to coach. You don't need to like prove yourself on that call. You need to ask really smart questions. And once you ask really smart questions and you get a sense that you're talking to an ideal client that is a perfect fit for something that you have, then we're going to move them to step 4, which is proposal. This is where the selling actually happens. This is when you're laying out your offer. This is when you're, making a recommendation to them as the best next step. And then step 5 goes very closely with step 4, and it's the close. Step 5, closing, is the second most missed step in the selling staircase. Most people might make it to step 4 and then they kind of hang out and they're not really sure why the person's not buying. Chances are it's because you're not closing. So those are the 5 steps: introduction, curiosity, discovery, proposal, and close.
And I think proposal without the close, again, is the trying to be the cat.
Yes. Like, don't make it hard for people to say yes and to pay you money. Your job is to make it as easy as possible for that person to make a decision to hire you. And the way that people make decisions is you put the question in front of them. You get it out of your mouth, you say it to them, and then you be quiet and you wait. And you see what they say next.
That's the key step, though. Everybody misses, like, be quiet and wait.
I know. It's so
best sales advice I've ever been given. But also, when you think about the process of selling too, what I think people overlook is they make it about themselves and about feeling like a victory if they make a sale, or like the chase, if you will, of the client. And what I think we have to realize with the client or the prospect is that they have a problem. They're seeking a solution. They were motivated enough to take an action to, say, get on a call with you, for example, they want their problem solved like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are, because like the way I always say it is, you never look for a nutritionist or dietitian or personal trainer until your jeans don't button. You know?
Yeah, good point.
Fact, right? Like,
Yes.
like when I have to jump into my jeans, I'm a millennial, so I still wear skinny jeans. But when you have to jump into those jeans, you go, all right, that's it. Calling this. I'm signing up for Weight Watchers. I'm doing whatever. Like, that's always been the case. So you have to remember that your customer is probably at a wit's end with their problem, enough so that they're taking action.
Yes.
So the sooner you can bring them to the value that they want, or the sooner you can propose the solution and design the plan for implementation and make it as easy as possible for them to go click here, sign here, pay invoice, you are already winning in delivering value by presenting and starting the solution as soon as possible.
Yeah, a lot of times, especially people who aren't comfortable with sales and selling and like what to do, is they try to get off the call with the person if they're on a live call. Like, I just want to get off the call with them, and then I'll send a proposal and then they can sign it later. And I get this pushback a lot. I always say, like, there's very few clients I've worked with, and I've worked with thousands, and I've worked one-on-one with hundreds of women entrepreneurs who push back on this idea of like, I can't take money on the call, Nikki. Yeah, you can. And as a matter of fact, you should. If they're ready to pay, you have to be ready to take the money, because once they pay, now they are already like feeling relief, what you're talking about. Like, they're already struggling with something and they want some relief, and paying gives them some relief of like, okay, now I'm in the process of getting this solution that I absolutely want. I want some kind of change, some kind of difference in my life. And now I'm in, and I'm on the journey. I'm not still waiting to get started.
And I love that. I think it's jam-packed with value in the sense of, we got each of these steps that we follow and say, how can I really think you have to make it about them and go, how can I make the solution as fast and as easy as possible for this person? But also, how can I get them to their solution the fastest? Well, that would be start today. Like, let's start today. Let's put the deposit down today. But I also think that if you're uncomfortable, this is just my opinion on this. I was uncomfortable taking the money on the call. I always have been a little bit like, we have a very high investment service. So I say, like, you just met me and I'm asking for this much money. Like, how dare I, right? Like, we just met, and now we just on our first date, and I'm inviting you to a Hawaii vacation. It's like, I don't expect you to say yes and book the ticket today. However, when you can take a deposit, or when you can make an equal commitment, though, I think it can make it more comfortable, where if you say, hey, let's put the deposit on today, I'll get started tomorrow, or we'll start the onboarding, or depending on what it is that you do or deliver, it kind of accelerates the whole process for you and for them, in a sense that if you want to feel better about it, I think there might be elements where you go, well, what would you have to do? What could you provide them that would give you more comfort in taking their money today, because you knew you could provide them immediate value right after the call hung up?
Yeah, I love that. And I will also say here too, just to really honor what you said, is be really careful about not trying to sell from somebody else's wallet. Like, you're making decisions about their level of like what that money means and what they're willing to invest. I actually worked with a client last week who we were prepping her for a consult, like a sales call that she had later that day. And we were talking about, what she'd already had a conversation with this person before. So in a lot of ways, this was kind of like answering final questions, issuing invitations to move the person to the next step. And she said, the program that I'm suspecting is the right fit for him is this $4,800 program. And I was like, okay, great. And she's like, but I can't take $4,800 without having delivered anything. And I was like, why? And, we talked through it, and it was all this like limiting belief about, because to her, that's a lot of money. And I was like, well, that may be a lot of money to this person too, but it also might be a drop in the hat. Like, they might not think that that's a lot of money. So we have to be ready to let them pay in full if they want to, because then their level of commitment might feel different. So we're going to position it to pay in full, and then we're going to let them say how they feel about it. And so she was like, okay, so she did exactly what she was supposed to, what I coached her through. she put the offer and the person said, is there any way I can just pay 50% up front? She was actually going to only take she was going to break it into 6 payments, that $4,800. So she was only going to take a little bit up front, like not even $1,000. They were so happy to pay 50% up front. Now, it's good for her because it's cash influx into her business. It's good for this person because they got exactly what they wanted. But the only way to get there is by putting that offer in front of them and just saying the program is $4,800. Would you like to go ahead and get signed up today? And have them go, I do want to get signed up. Is there any way I can just pay 50% now? Yes. Great. Now we both feel good about it.
Yeah. But I think that speaks to, going back into what you were saying about anchoring, I want to dig a bit deeper into that, right? Because this relates to anchoring, because what you're doing is you're directing the perception of price.
Yes.
And what you just described is assuming the perception of price that is the same as yours. So I feel like $4,800 is a lot of money. Therefore, they must. No. We all see $20 differently. I did this whole thing where I said, well, $20, what does $20 mean to you? There are some people who wouldn't bend over to pick up a $20 bill. There are some people who would see that as a day's worth of food and could never let that go. It's all about what value do you assign to these dollars based on either how you earned them or what you typically spend money on, that you convert the currency in your head. We almost have like an internal currency converter of what does this mean? So if you talk about like $5,000, I go, $5,000 could mean something very small or it could mean something very big, but that is not your job to discern.
That's right.
And it is not your job to assume. And that is so, so, so important. I want you to take away from this, because that was a big lesson for me, was that it's not objective, it's subjective. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that as it relates to price anchoring, because I find this to be fascinating in how you can kind of direct the perception of your own price based on how you position it. So could you just explain what you mean by anchoring and how you've seen it used in context?
Yeah. So anchoring is establishing value, putting the higher price. So the way that I teach anchoring is what's called top-down selling. So that's not a new concept. It's just the concept that I recommend that my clients get really comfortable doing. So let's say that you have 3 packages, for instance. The thing that I usually recommend to my clients is when we're talking about pricing and we're talking about their offers, the thing that I'll ask them first and foremost is, what do you most want to sell? What is your most profitable offer? What's the thing that you enjoy doing the most and that you feel your clients get huge value from? So then they'll tell me it's this offer. And I go, great. Now we're going to create an offer that sits right above it. And the reason we're going to create the offer that sits above it is because we're going to anchor the higher offer. And then we're going to let them choose what's their best, like, what do they want to do? So if we've got 3 offers, right? We've got the offer you want to sell. We probably have a lower priced offer, a starting priced offer, and then we have the higher priced offer. So when I'm laying out the offers to a client, I'm going to say, there are 3 potential packages that you would be an ideal fit for. They range in price from, and I'm going to say maybe just to use some pricing here, I might say they range in price from $4,000 to $10,000. Now at the $10,000 level, here's what's included in this package. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to explain the $10,000 package. Then I'm going to say then the next step down is a $7,500 package or $7,000 package, whatever it is. This is the one you want to sell. Primarily, this is your profitable offer. So here's what you get at the $7,000. And if you just want to start at the basic level, that's the $4,000 offer. Now, of those 3, which do you prefer? Now, a lot of times people go, I don't really think I need the 10,000, but I definitely don't want to give up too much stuff. So I'm probably going to go with this mid tier because that is going to meet my objective here. And I still get quite a bit for it. And I don't really want the base model because I have to give up all these things. I'm already giving up stuff at the $10,000 level. I don't want to give up the things at the $7,000 level. So people don't like to have things taken away from them, right? Like as humans, we naturally attach ourselves to things. So we don't like to have things taken away. Most people, when they sell, they do bottom up selling. So they start with the least expensive package, and then they'll talk about the next expensive package and then the next expensive package after that. That is a mindset of you're telling your client, you got to pay more to get more. versus the top-down selling where you're saying you can save money, but you've got to give things up to do it. This actually allows for the client or prospect in this case to make the best decision for them. Doesn't mean they're always going to pick the mid package. Some people will start with the lower price. Some people actually will pick the highest price package because they want the full meal deal. They want everything. So make sure your high tier package is something you want to sell. Don't be afraid of adding kind of another level above your, what is the package you most want to sell, your most profitable offer. Put something above it. That's how you anchor that. It's kind of like, I have a friend that talks about behavioral economics. She's brilliant. And she teaches this concept of anchoring too, because it comes from behavioral economics. And it's like you go into a grocery store or something and it'll say, Snickers on sale today. You can get up to 16 of them at, whatever price that's the on sale price. And people go, well, I'm not an animal. I don't need 16 Snickers. I'm just going to get 8. Versus like, I'm just going to buy
like,
one.
were you going in to get 8 Snickers to begin with though?
No.
Did you have that on the shopping list?
That's right. So we have to anchor for people. It helps them make better decisions for themselves. And frankly, it's better for your business because it makes selling easier.
I agree. And on the subject of top down, there's another element of that I think is true, which is that, as you're describing, like they're hungry for a solution. Okay. Yeah. So they're listening intently to your options. If you start with the lower tier, they'll go, yeah, I need all that. And they have already mentally gone yes to that. Mm-hmm. And then they go up to the next level and they go, oh, that would be nice too. But they're already still they're almost anchored their own self into the lower price because that was the first thing they reacted to. Yeah. It's like the first dress you tried on and everything's going to compare to that.
Perfect. That's a perfect analogy.
Versus I tried on the expensive wedding dress and now I'm like, well, nothing holds a candle to the way you just described that. Like that was the best fitting one because it was the first thing I heard and fell in love with. That's right. Because now everything's going to compare to that because it's the first thing I got to hear from you was, yeah, I need all of that. That sounds amazing. And then you go, oh, but I have to give up this and it's cheaper, give up this and it's cheaper. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, you nailed it, Shannon. I love that. I love how you just laid that out. That's such a great.
Yeah, that was the first dress you tried on. I can relate to this from like my wedding. I was like everything compared to the first dress that I liked because it was the first one that gave me that emotion, and I was seeking that affirmation again of yes, I need that.
Yeah,
and it was just yes, I need that. Oh, that works too. Oh, that works too. But that was the first reaction.
Yeah.
But when you start with the bottom up, now you're competing with your own lowest price.
That's right.
And having to argue the value of the add-ons as opposed to going the other way. I think that's brilliant. I'm definitely keeping that, borrowing from that.
And if you're thinking like as the listener, if you're thinking right now, like I'm struggling or I'm struggling because people often don't see my value. They don't see the value of the work that I provide. Well, how are you laying out your value? If you think about what Shannon just did, and she talks about this idea of like that first dress they tried on that they liked, they anchored themselves to it. Of course, it's hard for you to articulate value after they're already like, but this is enough. So be careful.
They've already mentally said yes to that, and then they stop listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's the case. Like when you find the thing that fits, especially put yourself in my position where I was engaged and in August and I wanted to get married in May or June. And they were like, you need to pick a dress by October. The first one that fits that you like is your dress, period. That's kind of what your buyer is doing. Like remember that your buyer is not spending every night and weekend researching your solution, like researching your competitors and trying to make informed decisions. Most of the time they are going for the convenient first person who responded. Like, don't get all up in your ego about this because we do this as customers too. And you guys listening, we'll do this and say like, well, they're the first person who responded. So it made it easier for me to decide. You have to just like make that decision easier for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that people discount the little details of, like speed of response and anchoring the price to your point. And like, it's the little things though, because they're not going to seek out 100% of information on you and every competitor and do a complete analysis of why you are a better option. It comes down to the little details and their emotion. 100%.
That's right. And as humans, like we're bombarded all day long. We have to make decisions all day long. We've got so much stuff coming at us. We want the easy. And this is why,
Yes.
again, I teach clients, you have to make it so easy for people to buy from you, so easy for them to say yes to you. That's how you earn business versus like trying to go out and be complicated. And then kind of how we talked about earlier in the conversation of like, if you're going out and you're like, I'm the cat, chances are you're repelling so many potential buyers that will benefit from you and the service that you can provide. Like, be really careful about that.
Absolutely. And Nikki, I could talk about this with you all day. I do want to, before we wrap things up here, I do want to uncover a bit of the strategy behind. Now, we talk about price anchoring, we talk about the psychology a bit, but for those who have existing clients and you want to upsell them, you want to charge them more, you want to increase your prices, whatever that may look like. You're elevating your business and you have current customers and you want them to ascend to a new offer, or you want to upsell them into a new program, new product, whatever it may be. What are some of your strategies for taking your existing customers and elevating them with your company?
Okay, so it is super important that you really take into account, to scale your business, lifetime value of clients, right? And so the objective is to increase your lifetime value. One of the ways to do that is to learn how to create curiosity, even with your existing client base, about what's possible and what else. Because you might think, well, this client, they've been working with me for a couple of years. They know what my offerings are. No, they don't. They only know what they're buying from you right now. You might have told them about your other offerings 2 years ago before they hired you, but I can guarantee you they're not thinking about your other offerings right now. So your job is to be planting seeds and putting opportunities in front of them. So one example of this is, let's say you and I are in a conversation and there's something that you say and I go, I actually do have an offer that includes this service. Is that something you'd like to talk about? Like, I got to plant that seed for them. Or I might even just reach out to them and say, we've been doing this together for 2 years and I have some additional ideas of some ways that we could maybe continue to support you at a higher level. Is that something you'd be open to? So notice I don't go into like, you should really buy this other thing because it's going to do this and it's going to do that. No, I got to plant the seed, create that curiosity and have them go, yeah, of course. Tell me, what are these other things? Because they don't want to have to go out and search to buy from somebody else either. They want to continue to work with you if you're delivering at a high level for them. So your job is to be planting seeds, creating curiosity, and putting offers and opportunities in front of them.
I agree. And I want to point this out too, that I think people make this mistake all the time, which is assuming they have an appetite for your new offer. Like, just because they're a current customer, well, I'll just move them into this other offer because that's what I'm selling now. But it may be solving a different problem. And you may not have created enough curiosity for that offer to assume that they're going to be your client no matter what you sell. Yeah. And that's a really big important thing. And I'm seeing this right now in context. So as a fractional CFO myself, a lot of bookkeepers, a lot of people who do basic bookkeeping, and there ain't nothing wrong with that, are trying to also upsell into CFO services. And I say, well, you have to remember that you're changing the perception they have of how they work with you. Mm-hmm. You're offering a different service that's a lot more high touch, a lot more expensive, but you can't assume that just because they use you for that they're also going to use you for those high level services until you can create enough of an appetite for that. And I compare it to if they're used to ordering In-N-Out burgers, Burger King, whatever you want to use. If you're used to ordering In-N-Out burgers from you, when you start offering filet mignon on the menu, you're going to go, I don't know about that because I've never come to you for that before. I don't think of you as where I buy my steak.
That's right.
I don't think of you for date night. I think of you for, you solve a different problem for me and it's not better or worse. But you have to make sure that you're aligned with the problem that they're trying to solve and that you become that go-to person for that offer. So if you're upselling them into, say, a more elevated offer that you're doing, or you're trying to transform your business and do more services, you still have to make sure that you're almost selling them all over again for the new offer and not assuming that they're going to come along for the ride.
Oh my gosh, Shannon, I feel like you should clip that and that should be like your teaching for that was so good. And just to maybe kind of, build off of that a little bit too is, and the piece that I would say here is that don't ever assume that you just have somebody's business and you're going to keep it. You should always think about your job is to earn the business. So in your example of like moving from bookkeeping to CFO services, that you might want to give them a taste of what's possible there, right? Like they might need, because I know for me, if I'm buying burger from someplace and now they want to offer me filet mignon, they
Hello,
probably
the
need to let me
McRib?
taste it.
The McRib? Are you kidding me?
Right.
You know how suspicious I was of that when that came out? I was like, I don't go there for ribs. What are you guys doing?
Exactly. I'm trying to think if I've ever even had a McRib. I'm not sure.
Case in point.
Taste it. But if you give me a taster, maybe then if I'm like, yeah, I like this. I love the amuse-bouche. Do you know that term? I think it's a French term.
No.
Like that taste, that like one bite. You have to whet people's appetite, right? So sometimes you got to give them a taste of what's possible so they go like, oh, I want more of that. So, I think again, playing your cards really close to your vest or trying to play cat with people of like, well, if you want me, you've got to pay me all this extra money. If they're paying you some money now, how about giving them a taste? And I'll if I can, I'll give an example of how I do this in my business. So I have a group coaching program. It's called the Sales Maven Society. And one of the things that I also do is I do private one-on-one coaching with my clients. And some people are just private coaching clients. Some people are, just society members, and some people are do both. But for my society members, one of the things I do is I do this, I call it a loyalty bonus, that once they've been in the society for a certain amount of time, I gift them a 15-minute, I call it a spotlight coaching session with me. Clients are often like, I don't know what I could do in 15 minutes with Nikki. And then they get on these calls and they're like, holy smokes, I can't even believe that that's what we just did in 15 minutes. Well, that whets their appetite. So then when they get an offer to do strategy sessions with me, they're so much more likely to buy them because they had a taste of what it's like to have that private coaching attention from me. And so that's just one way that I do that in my business. And so if people think, well, I only work with Nikki in this, in this group coaching program and that's it. And that private coaching thing is like for a different level of client. Well, that's actually not true, but I have to give them that taste first.
Yeah. Look at it like dating. If you're not offering second dates or weekend trips, but only a week in Hawaii or nothing, who's going to sign up for that? It's commitment. When you're expecting large commitment with little contribution to that rapport deposit, right? Now it's, whoa, like you're asking for a big withdrawal here of like my trust, my commitment. Imagine if we were on Match.com and they were like, do you want to go to Bora Bora together? And it's like, abso-freaking-lutely not.
No way.
Like, can we start with a phone call? Can we start with just building a little bit of trust and seeing what you're about here?
Yeah.
Guys, imagine if someone did that to you, you might be doing that to your customer.
Yeah, be really careful. And it's always good to take a step back and look at your process. I know I worked with a client one time and she was showing me these messages that she was sending out. She wanted some feedback on them. And my first question was to her, have you ever gotten a message like this? And she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, what did you think when you first got it? She's like, oh, I deleted. I was super offended. I was like, then why are you sending basically the same message out to other people? And she's like, well, that's how they taught us to do it. And it's like, but when you get the message, you're offended and you delete it. Like, stop doing things that are so polarizing to you that you don't like it when it's done to you. Don't do it to somebody else, right? It's the golden rule.
Very true.
To others. Like, knock it off.
I totally agree. Like I said, I could talk about this all day, Nikki, but we got to wrap things up for you listening. Nikki, where can people find out more about working with you, Sales Maven Society, all the things, in case they're interested in learning more?
The easiest way, and I'm going to wrap this around a gift for your audience, is I have an ebook called Closing the Sale. It goes through those last 3 steps of the sales conversation, the discovery, the proposal, and the close. I'd love to give that to your audience, and then we'll be connected from there. So you can get it by going to yoursalesmaven.com/keep for the podcast. So I'd love to gift that to you, like I said, and then you'll be on the website. We'll be connected. I'm happy to hear from you. Like, what was your big takeaway from today's episode? If I said something that you're like, I don't know about that, I'd like to hear that too.
Yeah. Welcome all feedback. And do you have an Instagram handle that people can follow along with you?
Yeah, it's just Your Sales Maven. Super easy to find me there.
Amazing. Guys, check out the link in the show notes. If you didn't catch that URL, don't worry. Just click below in the show notes and follow along with Nikki through her Instagram or her website if you want to learn more. And we'll be catching up soon. Nikki, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.